Bitcoin is it has the ability to work on you, the investor, in many different ways. And part of it is psychological, and part of it is just from a pure money management perspective. How much do you want to allocate? How much do you want to go into this? And as you get deeper into it, you realize that other people that are talking about it, their arguments are terrible. And that adds to my conviction. So, for example, I don't want to go on a huge Peter Schiff diatribe here, but his arguments are terrible. And I told Peter to buy it. I sat down with him at his house in Connecticut for a couple of hours and walked him through it when Bitcoin was under $10. And every single year since then, over 10 years, he mentally can't get into it. And when I see somebody like that, I'm open to any argument against Bitcoin. I listen to everybody every single day. Give me the argument against it. And every time I hear something, I know it doesn't work. The FUD, it never works. And it just increases my conviction. And it increases the idea of what is the total addressable market of this asset class. And certainly Michael Saylor's done a great job in saying, that melting ice cube on the balance sheet, you look at the corporate world, there's trillions of dollars. You look at the money management world, there's trillions of more dollars. You look at it versus gold, and is it going to capture part or all of gold's monetization? That's a $9 to $10 trillion market cap. Yeah, that's all happening. So the price is still cheap. And then as a money manager, you figure, I got to own it. You got to keep nibbling at it. It's still cheap. Bitcoin at this price is still incredibly cheap.
Yeah. Well, you came from a fascination and interest in gold. Obviously now have pretty much hard right into Bitcoin for a very long time now. Probably one of the earliest people I know of that had conviction and held on. When you think about gold today, is it just writing on the wall, it's over? Do you think that it still has a place in some people's portfolio? How do you think of that specific asset?
Well, I think we're seeing a migration out of gold into Bitcoin, and the ETF market proved that. The money flows, the reports you're getting from brokerages tell you that money is being dumped from the gold ETFs and moving into Bitcoin surrogates, GBTC, and other areas. So we're seeing that migration happen right now. And it makes sense because it does everything gold does, but it does it a lot better. It's absolutely scarce, whereas gold is only relatively scarce. It's obviously more portable, it's more divisible, it's more useful, and it's unconfiscatable, which is gold doesn't have that attribute. People can confiscate your gold. It's cheaper to own than gold. Gold has insurance costs, it has storage costs, it has verification costs. Every time you do a major gold play, you've got to get the gold verified by a third party. With Bitcoin, the transaction is the verification. I mean, that's a phrase that I picked up on early on. And as a former stockbroker, you realize that a lot of the cost that goes into brokering is in verification of the transaction. There's a huge, what's called the back office. It's just hundreds of people back there verifying trades and doing all the paperwork. With Bitcoin, that's completely taken out of the equation. The transaction is the verification. That right there, eliminates an enormous amount of our current financial system. So you just compared to gold, it just stacks up. It gets better and better. And I think that trend will continue. Certainly in the millennial and Gen X, they're totally sold on Bitcoin. They're never going to adopt gold. And the only buyers left for gold are really the sovereigns, Russia, China, and others. And I think when one of those sovereigns breaks rank and says, we're putting Bitcoin on our balance sheet, that's just going to be another nail in the coffin of gold and another huge boom in Bitcoin. So we're seeing a once in 1,000 years migration pomp from the perception of the premier store of value, number one global top tier money, into something new, and it happens to be Bitcoin.
So before we talk a little bit more about the geopolitical landscape, which I think is probably the most fascinating conversation right now, you were so early, but you also tried to orange pill a ton of people. You mentioned Peter. Are there other folks that you went to that people either don't know about or folks that you had conversations with that just didn't get it, still don't get it? Like any stories from the very early days that would surprise people?
Right. As I've said many times, I was really hard trying to get Russell Brand, who's a famous guy in the UK, into Bitcoin. He was not really able to get what it was all about. This was again when it was $50 or so. I gave him some Bitcoin. I don't know what he ever did with it. I'm pretty sure he lost it. I saw him recently on his podcast asking people to explain to him what Bitcoin is. We had, if you look at Keiser Report, we had several shows in his actual flat in London talking about Bitcoin. So he must have amnesia. My friend Alec Baldwin, who I knew from New York University, when Bitcoin was under $10, $20, I was talking to him about it and trying to get him into it. Alex Jones, of course, when Bitcoin was under $5, I offered to give him 10,000 Bitcoin to give to his audience to spread the word, because Pomp back then in 2011, a lot of people were giving away thousands of coins as a way to spread the word. When it was cheap like that, it was easy to do. So Alex Jones, he rejected the idea and said, no, that's some kind of CIA coin. I don't want it. So he rejected it. He rejected that offer of 10,000 coins. And the list goes on from there. Everyone I met, I was trying to get orange pilled as we do. And I guess those are some of the celebrity instances.
How much Bitcoin do you think you've given away over the years? I don't want to know how much you have, but how much do you think you gave away in the early days when you were trying to help people spread the word or drive adoption? Tens of thousands of Bitcoin?
Thousands.
Thousands? I mean, when you think back to that, worth it?
Well, you never have enough. I mean, what can I say? It's in some, the Bitcoin phenomenon ultimately, I like to think about Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller was a visionary thinker, and he made a decision early on in his life that he wouldn't do anything in life that wasn't beneficial for humanity. And he created the geodesic dome. He created the first electric car, or one of the first electric cars. And he thought strategically about humanity. And Bitcoin is something that's pro-humanity. As Paul Tudor Jones even said that gold is a bet on disaster. Bitcoin is a bet on humanity, that it's going to get better. So, I mean, part of this is being involved in something that's going to improve humanity, improve what our experience as humans, on this earth, because Bitcoin demonetizes violence, whereas fiat money really monetizes violence. The petrodollar and the whole war industry, and it's all based on fiat money and money printing and that Ponzi scheme of money printing. It's a very violent area. Fiat money is the source of violence. Bitcoin is demonetization of violence. So in that context, you're like, well, I'm doing something, I'm part of a bigger thing. And with Bitcoin, everyone who gets involved to it in a big way really learns to get humble and say, you know what, this is bigger than me. And there's something potentially that could be great for humanity here. People who are narcissistic egomaniacs have a big difficulty getting into Bitcoin. I think that's the Nassim Taleb story. He's rightfully proud of the work he's done with his books, etc. But he developed this narcissism that prevents him from seeing the humanity of Bitcoin. And so he's essentially committed professional suicide with his antics of the past few months. And we see that with Nouriel Roubini or Paul Krugman. They've committed professional suicide because they don't have the humility to approach Bitcoin on that level. So to answer your question, sure, I gave away thousands of coins, but if it's part of the journey, that if it ends up being beneficial to humanity as a whole, then I think that that's something we can all be proud of.